A couple of weeks ago, I introduced a video on human design, so go watch that video. And so what human design is a modality to know yourself better, meaning that to know the way God has created and designed you. So the premise of human design is all about energy and the way energy is flowing through your 9 energy centers. These are your 9 energy centers, and how energy is flowing through you in your channels. These are your channels and the gateways that connect the channels and the energy centers. And so there are 2 ways that energy can flow through you in human design. The first way, they call it defined, meaning that the energy is flowing through your energy centers in a consistent way, or your channels or your gateways in a consistent way. The second way that energy can flow through you in human design is inconsistent, and they call that undefined, meaning that that energy is flowing through you inconsistently at different times. So you can't rely on the way that energy flows through you, which means that that energy is open, or the channels or the gateways are open. So one design is not necessarily better than the other. It's just oranges and apples, because God has created each and every one of us uniquely, and the way energy flows through us is going to be special and unique to each one of us. And so the 2 ways that your human design is determined, the first factor is the day and location when you were born, and the second factor is 88 days before you are born. Those are the 2 factors that we need to know in order to determine your human design. And so in this week's video, I want to review the 9 energy centers, what they mean and represent, as well as the channels and gateways, and the human design types. So for the purpose of this video, I pulled up my own human design to use it as an example so I can explain the energy centers, the channels, and gateways better. And it's a lot easier if I have an actual example. And because I had my human design chart, it's a lot easier for me to speak about my own design. So today, you guys are going to get to know me a lot better because this is my human design. And so as you can see up here, these 2 energy centers, the first one is called head crown center, and the one right below it is called the ajna mind center. And so the head crown center is to receive information from outside of you. That's what the purpose of it is for. And then the ajna center is to process that information once it comes in. Now, as you could see in my design, both the crown and ajna centers and the channels, you see these 3 lines? Those are the channels that connect these centers, are completely open, which means that energy is flowing through here inconsistently, and therefore it is undefined. So what this means for me is that I could pick up any information from anywhere because my crown center is completely open, and process all of that information. And so in some ways, I could kind of be psychic, because if I need an answer to a question, and let's say I'm in a room full of people and I don't know the answer and somebody else knows the answer, if I'm using this center correctly, I could psychically pick up the information from somebody else because it's totally open. However, there's a flip side of the coin. Everything is yin and yang. If I don't use this center properly, because I'm receiving so much information, and now I'm overloaded with information and trying to process all of that information, it's so overwhelming that if I don't use these centers properly, I create a lot of confusion. I create anxiety, stress, and self-doubt because there's just too much information and I don't know how to process it. So there are 2 sides of the coin. On the one hand, it's great because I could receive any information that I need. On the other hand, it's too much information to process. Then I create confusion, anxiety, and stress. And so that's what these two centers are all about. So now we go down to the throat center, which is right here. And the throat center is about how you manifest and communicate to the world. And because my throat center is undefined, it means that the way I communicate with people may not be consistent. And so it also means that, and the good part of it is that because it's undefined, I could pretty much say anything to anyone with one big exception. The one big exception is that if I am going to express any kind of personal advocacy, let's say give advice to somebody else about their life, then I must be invited to do so. If I am not invited to do so, then I should not speak. So there is one big exception to what I'm able to say, because I'm able to say anything as long as somebody invites me to say it. That is the one big exception with my throat being undefined. And also the way I communicate, the best way to communicate with others is by using the guidance of spirit. Rather than having a script in front of me, I channel the spirit and then my communication flows. And so that's the throat center. Now we go down here, and this is called the G love center. And this center is all about love, purpose, and direction. And as you can see, my G center is defined. And because it is defined, it means when I love people, I love them in a certain way. And I will always love people in that way because my energy flows consistently. When it comes to my purpose and direction, I have a very good sense of what my purpose and direction is. I know what it is. And it's true. I do know what it is. My purpose is to really promote higher consciousness living, spiritual living, holistic living. I know that is my purpose and direction. And because this center is defined, I have a clear sense of that. And so these two centers become very important for that communication, manifestation, love, purpose, and direction. So now we move down to this center, which is called the ego heart center. And this center represents your self-worth, self-esteem, your desires, and your relationship to the material world. That's what it represents. And so as you can see, my heart ego center is defined. So because it's defined, it's all about doing the things that I truly, truly love. When you have this center defined, you, above all other people, must do only the things that you love, because it's really about your heart's desires. What is it that you truly desire? And so, like I said again, this is defined. And so if I do anything other than what I love, I become depressed, frustrated. It's not in alignment with the flow of who I am. So it's really, really important that I make what I love my priority in life. And when I do the things that I love, then I can help and serve others. But I can't help and serve others unless I am doing something that I truly love. And my business partner, this is also defined for her. And so she also must do only the things that she really loves. So below that is what you call the sacral center. And this center is what you call the life force energy center. It's the center that creates life, that creates all life. This is a center of tremendous power. It's like a vortex of spiraling energy that never stops. This energy never stops right here. It is the life force energy. And so this energy over here is about creativity, is about birth, it's about life. So because my center here is defined, I have a lot of creative potential to just be able to, constantly come up with new ideas and create and just, constantly be this creative force and have unlimited energy to be able to make that creation. This energy center is like a battery. You know how a battery has all that energy and then the energy runs out and then you renew that battery? Well, that's what it is. When you have this energy center, you've got unlimited amount of energy. Let's say during the day, you got this unlimited amount of energy. And then when you go to bed, that's when you recharge your life force energy battery. Now, there are people who may have this defined and they say, I feel lethargic, I feel tired. It's because you're not using the design, your human design, in the right way. You're not in flow with that human design. So if you're not in flow with your human design, even though you have this life force energy, this endless energy, you don't feel energetic. And that's what happened to me. I told my human design coach, I said, you know what? I don't have that, necessarily that endless energy. And he said, well, you're not using your design the way you should. And that's the reason. And so for those of you who have this defined, this is a very powerful life force energy center. So next we go to our solar plexus center right here. And this center represents our emotions. And for those of us who are empathic, and I always say I'm empathic because I could feel the emotions of people around me, this center is usually open for those of you who are empaths. Because when you are open, you are taking emotions of other people and taking it from the world. And so 50% of us have this center open and 50% of us have it defined. And so for those of us who have it undefined, like me, as you can see, because we're taking in the emotions of other people, we have to be able to release that and let that emotion run through us, especially if it's a negative emotion, right? Because you don't want to hold on to that negative emotion because it really does a lot of harm to our body. And so for those of you who have this emotional center undefined, you have to do like certain types of meditations or practices like EFT, emotional freedom technique, to release those emotions and let it run through your body. Another technique for those of you who have this undefined is to say, this is not my emotion, it's somebody else's. That's a technique. That's a technique that you should use. This is not my emotion, it's somebody else's. And let that emotion run through you. Keep releasing that emotion. So I have to do a lot of emotional releasing because of the center. So now below that is the root center right here. Right down here is the root center. And the root center is a pressure point. Like this is a pressure point and this is a pressure point. This is a pressure point to get things done. To get things done. And so because my root center is undefined, if I start receiving pressure from outside of me, it causes stress and anxiety. It's undue pressure. If people outside of me are pressuring me to do something, it's not very good. Now, if I create the pressure for myself, a little pressure like I want to do this, that's okay, because that pressure will motivate me to do something. But that pressure, because it's undefined, has to come from me, not from other people, because I already put pressure on myself. So for those of you who are undefined, it's make sure, be aware that pressure comes from you rather than coming from other people. That's really, really important when you have this root center undefined. It's a pressure point to get things done. So the last center is up here, which is the spleen center. And this center represents your intuition, the instinct for the survival, and also the awareness of your body, of your health. Having a health consciousness awareness. And so because my spleen center is undefined, my health can be sensitive. It doesn't mean that my health is not strong. It means that it's just sensitive, which means that I have to be aware and more mindful of the foods that I eat, of the sleep that I get, and also the physical activity. I have to be very good to my body because my body is more sensitive. It's also because it's the center of having that survival instinct. If this center is undefined, someone could be living in fear, of losing their job, of, losing this, just a lot of fear if this is undefined. And so I have to be very mindful that I have to take care of my body, and also the mindful of the fears that I have about survival. It's a survival instinct center. And so for those of us who are undefined, sometimes when we are in the presence of somebody who has this defined center, we feel more grounded. And it doesn't mean that that person is good for us, because when we're around people who have the center defined, they're not necessarily good for us because we feel more grounded. So we have to have an awareness of that about our spleen center, especially when it's undefined. And so these are the 9 energy centers. And next I want to talk to you about the channels and gateways that connect these 9 energy centers. In order to understand your design in a much more profound way and be really specific about who you are, you want to be looking at the channels and gateways that connect your energy centers. This is where you get really specific about who you are, and it becomes much, much more interesting. And so in a human design, there are 36 channels and 64 gateways. So also when you look at your channels and gateways, you'll see 2 colors. The black color represents that the energy was formed consciously, which means that the energy was formed the day that you were born. And then the red color represents that the energy was formed unconsciously 88 days before you were born. And so when you see both colors right here, you see the black and red stripes over here. That means that energy was formed both consciously and unconsciously. And so that's another thing to be aware when you're looking at the channels and gates. So where it becomes really significant and important are the channels and gateways that are completely defined and connect 2 energy centers completely. So where you see in my design is that I have 2 areas where the channels are completely defined and connect 2 defined energy center. The first one here is the channel and gateway 25 to 51. It's between my G center and my heart center. You see this, how it's fully defined right here? This is very significant to know who you are. This channel and gateway represents initiation, being in the frontier. So I'm the kind of person that will keep initiating things. And I have done this many, many times where I've initiated projects and then worry about the consequences later. Because I always say, oh, I'll figure it out. So this channel is about experiences, just having pure experiences, being on the frontier, initiating, and being on my own path. I don't really listen to the white noise of society. It's always about being on my own path, beating to my own drumbeat. It's really about that journey, that individual journey of initiation and having experiences and worrying about the consequences later. So that's what this channel represents for me. The other channel and gateway that's very significant for my design is here, 2 to 14. As you can see, it's completely defined. It's completely connecting my G center to my sacral center. And this channel represents alchemy. You know how the alchemist can turn lead into gold? Well, that's the potential of this channel, is that I have the ability to turn a raw material into a higher consciousness, higher frequency. And so I could take, something that seems to have no value, and then I can transform it and turn it into something that has a higher vibrational frequency. And that's a pretty cool power, I think, or design, I should say, that I could see things that might not seem to fit, like I could see like A and B and they seem to not fit. And then I'll kind of fit it together and then I'll transform it into a higher energy. And so that's also very significant for my design because I have it completely defined with these two defined energy centers. And so then you'll see other channels that are semi-defined. You see halfway here, 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 here. These will give you some insight into who you are, but they're not as significant or as important as these ones that fully connect your defined energy centers. Those are the ones that you should really look out for to really understand who you really are. So based on where energy flows through you consistently and inconsistently, now you have the human design types. And there are basically 5 major human design types. The first I'm going to talk about is the reflector. And the reflectors have no defined center. They are completely open and they make up like 1% of the population or like less than 1% of the population because they have no energy centers defined. Everything is open. Now, if everything is open, it means that they are taking in and they are reflecting everyone around them. And because they are reflecting everyone around them, they are taking in so much information. And when you take in information from other people and you're reflecting that information, you become very wise because you understand where that person is coming from, right? You can put yourself in that other person's shoes in some ways because you're reflecting. You have nothing defined. So everything about you is open to other people's energies. So when you start to see the perspective of other people, you start to have wisdom. And so that's what a reflector is one of the wisest people that there ever is. And they're not somebody who should be making big decisions every day. They should be making big decisions only at a specific time. But like I said again, they only make up maybe 1% of the population. So the next human design types are the projectors, and they make about 22% of the population. And the projectors take on other people's energies that are around them, and then they're able to guide the other people to what they should be doing, to the direction that they should be going. So the projectors can make great leaders because they have an innate sense of the other person, what they could do, how they are, and then they could guide them in the right direction that they should be going into. And so the strategy for projectors is to be invited. They should not initiate. They should not take action on their own. They should be invited and then take action. That's the strategy for projectors to be in the flow of their design. So the next human design types are the manifestors, and they make about 8% of the population. The manifestors have one of their motor centers connected to their throat center, and their sacral center is undefined. And the manifestor is all about taking initiation. They can manifest. And so it's not about them waiting or be invited, that they could initiate. And they're the only human design type that can initiate and be in flow with their design. So that's what a manifestor is about. So then we have the manifesting generators. And the manifesting generators have one of their centers connected to their throat centers, and then they also have their sacral centers defined. That's what a manifesting generator is. And so the strategy of a manifesting generator to be in flow with their design is to wait, to know their truth, and then to respond. That's the strategy for the manifesting generator, is to respond, but only respond when they know their truth. And then they can respond and act. That's the right strategy for a manifesting generator. So the final human design type are the generators. And I am a generator because generators have the sacral center defined and nothing connected to their throat center. Their throat center is undefined. There's nothing connected to that. And so being a pure generator means my strategy to be in flow with my design is to wait and respond. Now, there's a million things I can respond to. I can respond to an email. I can respond to what somebody says. I can respond to an inspiration. You know, everything in life is about responding, right? We're constantly responding all day, every day. So it's easy to respond. And the best way that generators can respond is for somebody to give us a yes and no question, because then it's easy. We don't use a lot of energy. If somebody says, Moon, do you want carrot or celery? I could just easily say carrot. Do you want to drink water? I could say yes and no. Yes and no questions are great for generators. It's easy. They don't have to take a lot of energy. And so our strategy to be in flow is to just respond. It's not like the manifestors that can initiate. It's not our strategy to initiate. To be more successful with a life is to just respond. So these are the 5 major design types, and really to know the strategy for your design and behave consistently with that strategy to have better results in your life. So the final important thing to understand about your design is called the inner authority. The inner authority are the set of tools in your body in one of these energy centers that allows you to make a decision. Because often we don't want to make a decision through our mind. The mind is just there to take in information, process it. But then to actually make a decision, you want to use an inner authority. And the inner authority comes from where you are defined, which energy centers are defined. So for me, I have 3 energy centers are defined, which means that I can rely on 3 energy centers to make my decision. But the most important energy center for me is my sacral center right here. That's the prominent energy center that's for me. So when I go make a decision, I can use this energy center to ask it questions to give me an answer, yes and no. And it's through a feeling, a sensation. So for me, it's all about the gut. It's all about right here. So there's a certain sound that my gut makes that would say yes. And then there's a certain sound that my gut makes that says no. And so for the other centers, it might be different. For here, the heart center, it might be a feeling of like the energy flowing up or the energy flowing down. So when you go to make a decision, you ask one of your inner authorities a yes and no question. And that's how it's better to make a decision based on what your body is telling you than all the information that you're trying to process in your head. Because often we can't know ourselves intellectually, right? You can't necessarily put your mind right here. Your mind is not really like, you can't really hold your mind and look at it. So it's difficult to make a decision through your mind. So in human design, they encourage you to make decisions based on your inner authority, where you are defined, and to get that physical sensation to say yes or no. So in human design, to make decisions is through your inner authority. So I just shared with you a very personal thing, which is my human design. And if you want to know more about yourself, get your own human design done through a human design expert. And if you already know your human design and your human design type, whether you're a projector, manifestor, generator, share it with us. Let us know who you are, because your comments, your stories, your feedback really help me and my community at large. And if you like this video, please make sure to share it and subscribe to my channel. And if you want to visit all of my spiritual and holistic living tips, just go to my website at yinandyangliving.com. Namaste.